Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Rent Prep for Landlords. Steve, this is episode 216.
Yep. And this one's going to be pretty timely because we have an in the news topic that we're going to be going over, which was pretty recent in
July 4th.
Yeah. And this, I'm sure people by now have heard of this. This is the tenant who was kicked out of the pool for wearing his socks. At the apartment
And it
complex.
got dicey. I don't know if I shared all of the story details. I know you saw it on Facebook floating around because it went viral, but we're going to be talking about that, but also maybe some learning lessons because of that story, what you could do to avoid something like this.
And what do you do after?
Yeah. And then, we got a nice little landlord hotline call that we're going to discuss as well. All of that right after this.
1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah.
Welcome to the Rent Prep for Landlords podcast. And now your hosts, Stephen White and Eric Worrell.
All right, Steve. This article, we're going to get right into the in the news section here. So we only got one today because I thought that we could kind of deep dive into this story. I mean, I'm looking at this from USA Today. It came from, I always pick these authors with really hard names. Nadea Yancey Bragg of USA Today wrote on this, but this showed up everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, this was any news outlet pretty much picked this up.
Yeah, I don't think I saw this on Facebook. I think I saw this like in the news, like literally like on TV in the news.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It went viral. It was a video and a post that came from Cam Porter, who is I believe a resident of Riverside Apartments in Memphis. So just this one video had 1.3 million views, and I think her post had something like 10,000 shares.
Wow.
Just absolutely went bananas.
Yeah.
And for anybody who missed it, basically what happened was she was in the community pool at Riverside Oaks Apartments. I think it might have been her boyfriend, husband, or something of that nature, had socks on still. The property manager was there enjoying her 4th of July, kind of out in her swimsuit, said, you can't be in the pool with those socks on. Cam takes a video and says, you know what? Looks at the pool rules and says no socks, hats, shirts in the pool. Scans over and sees 3 gentlemen all wearing hats in the pool. Says, you know what? This is crap. Like, they're in violation of the pool rules as well.
I didn't know that part of the story. I thought the pool rules said nothing about no socks. It said no socks?
Yeah, it said no socks, no shirts, no hats.
Okay.
So
all right. Yep. Okay.
Right off the bat, you're kind of like, okay, property manager was enforcing some of the pool rules.
Yeah.
This kind of gets into the whole discussion on like being consistent, right?
Sure.
'Cause that's
yeah.
really what the core issue of this was the property manager was not consistent with the pool rules set.
Right.
Then it kind of turned into more of a racial issue because the person that she pointed out was African American and the people that were her friends were white. But then where things really went off the rails was the property manager just said, nuh-uh, not today, and called the cops on this person.
Yeah.
So pretty crazy story. I mean, I don't know what kind of escalation happened in between the property manager pointing out the socks versus having to call the cops.
Yeah.
But we were discussing before we got on the call, right? Like, who's right, who's wrong here.
Yeah.
I mean, it did end in this property manager being fired.
Yeah. Well, as it should have, I believe. Okay. Here's my perspective on it. Definitely changed that now that I found out that there were posted rules that said no socks, no hats. What was the other thing?
No shirts, no shirts, hats, or socks in the pool.
My first defense was that maybe this guy has horrible feet and people would have appreciated him wearing socks in the pool.
Yeah.
I've seen some people that I'm like, you should put some socks on probably, even with sandals or whatever you got going on. Maybe that was this guy's situation. I don't know. I was trying to look at it from a different perspective. Now that I know that there's posted rules, they're all wrong in this situation. They're wrong for pushing the issue that if it says no socks, it means no socks. The property manager is obviously wrong for not enforcing it unanimously across the board. If you're going to enforce the socks issue, you have to enforce the hats, which is also on the list of items. And clearly in the video, you see a whole bunch of people wearing hats in the pool as well.
Yeah.
They're all wrong. This was a bad situation. But here's where it becomes worse. If you own that property, now you have somebody that is speaking on your behalf, that's getting all of this attention, all of this public attention. And it becomes a terrifying thing to think that this person basically has your company's voice and that they're representing you and your company. And now you got a bad situation.
Even a little bit more recent than that is there was a story I saw on Reddit actually this morning. So there's a restaurant called Beer 88. I think they're in Virginia. Yeah, Lynchburg, Virginia. And right now they're actually going through the same thing that Riverside Apartments is, where their reviews online are getting lit up with all these negative reviews.
Yeah.
The Beer 88 one actually was interesting in that they had a 14-year-old kid who paid for dinner with his friends, and I think he had one large bill and a bunch of quarters.
Okay.
So the kid was 14. It was like a $35 bill. He put down a 20, then he paid the rest in quarters.
Sure.
And he gave a $10 tip, like
Nice.
really generous tip on like a $30 dinner, right?
Don't tell me they wouldn't let him pay in quarters.
They took a picture of it, posted it to social media to shame him and said, this isn't how you pay, blah, blah, blah. We're not a bank. We're not a Coinstar, but really ripped into this kid. And I think the fact that the kid left a really good tip, and it's like, he's a kid. Like, he's not trying to be a jerk. He probably just,
I paid for stuff with pennies.
What?
No
Yeah.
question
Quarters
about
are
it.
still legal tender. Pennies are not.
Pennies, you're being a jerk.
it was
Quarters, he's a kid. They probably had arcade games there. He probably went there with a pocket of quarters ready to play.
Yeah.
That's sad. All right. Well,
so they're getting lit up right now. You can see they have 282 Google reviews.
Yeah, for a local restaurant. That's insane.
I really doubt it. And you read through a lot of social justice warriors who've never eaten there, just giving their 2 cents.
The fact is, what you can take out of both of these stories is we are living in a time where you need to assume A, that everything's going to be recorded and videoed.
Mm-hmm.
B, the way that people post to social media, you have to assume that this is going to be something that everybody finds out about. And your hope is that it doesn't go viral. And it doesn't end up on a podcast or the evening news or whatever, because that just throws fuel to the fire. But yeah, you got to have people in place that make better decisions. And so it's really important, especially if you're a property owner, if you're using a property manager, if you're hiring property managers, take the time to train them what to do in a situation like this and to know what to do. Because if you leave it up to them to act in the moment, how they think that they should act, they may not be representing you the way that you want them to be.
Well, you can see it in the video too. The property manager was like waving kind of like passive aggressively at the person taking the video and all that stuff. So it wasn't like it was a secret video.
Yeah.
This girl was at the pool. Like
Right.
she had her camera out, her phone,
Right.
and was taking the video. And this property manager knew that this person was doing this. So then it's like, at that point, it's like, all right, like, yes, this came up actually in the Facebook group. Somebody posted this kind of, it was an eviction notice, and it had this really bad clip art kind of smiley face that was kind of like waving goodbye. And it just said something along the lines of like, say goodbye, you're being evicted or something.
Yeah.
And it's like, what do you guys think of this? So it was probably something they saw in some other group, so they posted it. It's one of those things that feels good in the moment where you'd be like, yeah, why don't I put up this funny, really like screw you kind of eviction notice? But like, that's going to be the person who's just got a little extra incentive to pour something down the toilets on the way out.
Absolutely. Yeah. Why don't I flush my socks on the toilet? So
Yeah.
say
And
goodbye.
to kind of like pull back, like why we were talking about that Beer 88 story or 88 beers with their reviews getting lit up. Riverside Apartments have been getting lit up on Google reviews. So, if somebody down the line is thinking about, looking at apartments in Memphis, Tennessee, they may just do a quick review of like,
As
looking
most
on
people
Google.
do these days, I would imagine.
Yeah. And
Not
they're going to see
uncommon.
2.7 stars for them. And they may not even click on it. They might go to the next one. So I was looking at the reviews, and one of them from a week ago came from Lynn Trevino. And it was, she's left 20 reviews, and this one was a 1-star review. And she said, I lived here in 2015, and it does not surprise me that the owners would now allow full-grown adults to wear big, dirty socks in the pool these days. I don't know if Lynn's really catching the whole purpose of what happened, or she's just seeing it through her own lens.
Yeah.
But they couldn't care less about most of the tenants there or their health. I found it to be very dishonest and cowardly on a couple of occasions, and in that every time they saw a bad review, they would capitulate on the deposit. But if you only complained in person, they would ignore you harshly. These cowards change the rules and treat everyone differently based on if they think they are in trouble. They have no integrity or consistency. So,
And you know what? I rescind my response originally there. Lynn, I think, wrote that intentionally exactly how she meant it. Because I'm in the same boat. Like, oh, big shock that they're not allowed to wear, or you know what I mean, big dirty socks. Like I get it. It is an issue. I get it. It could have been handled differently. That's the real point of the story. It's not whether or not socks should be allowed in pools. That's not the conversation. Or whether or not it was a black or white thing. It's how that property manager who was representing that business handled that situation.
How they
that
treated
moment.
that
Yeah.
person who pays money to use the pool and to live in that
Yeah.
apartment. So I guess one of the things that kind of stuck out with me is I feel like for this apartment building, if they were doing some sort of survey, right? If they were getting feedback from their tenants, from people who are moving out, and these are all things that you can automate. We had on Brad Larson, who talked about how he does these NPS surveys, Net Promoter Score. If you look up NPS SurveyMonkey, you can find these. These are really easy to set up. It's just how likely would you be to recommend this property or this company to a friend, 0 to 10. That gives you a benchmark score of how you're doing as a business. And you can use this in any business. But then there's also the opportunity to ask for feedback after they answer that question. So maybe if in 2015 they were doing these reviews, that this property manager who maybe, people would have called out by name and said, you know what, she's always extremely rude to us. It would have been this issue that could have been, a minor issue rather than it blowing up into a viral post. I don't know.
Now,
Maybe
granted,
not.
I was going to say, granted, if you do those surveys, you have to assume the vast majority of them are going to be useless to you, probably.
Well,
you're going to have to sift through.
because
Because
read reviews.
even bad reviews, when we see bad reviews online for property management companies or apartment communities or whatever, you're getting the other side of the story, basically. And you have to read through, you have to read between the lines and find out what's really happening here.
I usually go with the well, it's funny. The one beneath this review was from a day ago, and it's from Mariah, and she gave him 5 stars. But I immediately look at it, and it's all in caps, and I'm like, next. So I think you do kind of have to put your review goggles on and try to sift through things. Like I thought Lynn, she used the word capitulate, but I thought she kind of did it on purpose. Like she might have just went to thesaurus.com to really drive home the integrity of her review.
Yeah.
But some people, they do a little bit. A deplorable Kel. She left a 1-star review. I don't know. She's only got 1 review. I don't know if I trust her. She's deplorable. But if you are in a business, whether or not it's even just your full-time business, look up SurveyMonkey NPS surveys. Very easy to set up, very easy to do. I do think you can get valuable feedback from people and be able to, make improvements, but you got to, take the good with the bad.
I was just going to say, I'm not saying there won't be some gems. You're going to sift through some garbage and then find some gems. Yeah.
Well, I don't want to, go too far down the rabbit hole here, but if you guys want to check out the story, if you'd missed it, we will put a link to the original Facebook post in the show notes. So you can go and check that out and see the video. It's not the, it's no Martin Scorsese on the camera here, but
it's brutal and it's a long, boring video. But I would be interested if any
it struck a nerve though.
Yeah, and if anyone landlords want to reach out to us and give us some feedback how you would have handled the situation and what you think would have been the better approach. If you're the property manager, maybe you're the owner, you're looking at it from the point of view of how you would train the property manager, what to do. But I'd be interested. I'd be interested what people have to say about from a management point of view. How do you handle that? And then how do you handle it from this point moving forward? We both talked about you have to rebrand.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, their reputation online is destroyed. So I think that you're going to see them completely rebrand because of that online reputation being destroyed.
Sure, locally, I'm sure it's hurt pretty good too. So I think they got some work ahead of them.
Yeah. Well, let's us move on. So we've got a call that came into the landlord hotline, and you know what? I've been writing it down, Steve, so I can say it, and I don't have it. It's 218 something. You know what? Whatever. It's 716-218-0363. If you got a beef, if you got a question, whatever it is, you can call in. You just want to whine a little bit, call the landlord hotline, 716-218-0363.
If your dad's drunk and wants to talk about properties, call in for sure.
Absolutely. That was a great one. We actually got a comment in the Facebook group from someone who's like, please, more of this.
Yeah.
If you guys, you just need somebody to talk to, you feel lonely and you want to email somebody, don't call the landlord hotline. Email Rich at rentprep.com. He's our business development manager here. Yeah. If you got something you want to get off your chest,
he'd love to hear it.
Yeah, please email Rich at rentprep.com. It's a running joke in the office. We haven't gotten an email to him yet.
Yeah.
But just something absurd off the wall.
Yeah.
Just maybe something random, you like coconuts. Email Rich at rentprep.com.
All right. So this one comes in from.
It's anonymous, I believe.
Okay.
Yes.
And yeah, we're talking in this situation about what seems to be
Eviction scenario.
eviction scenario. Yeah.
Well, or is it?
Yeah.
All right, let's take a listen.
I have a tenant that I can't seem to get out of my house. She doesn't live there anymore. Her power's been shut off for over a month. She only has water because I have it piped in from my well. She bums around the neighborhood from place to place. She has no job or anything, and I need to know if I can go in and go ahead and remove her things from my house because she hasn't paid rent in over 4 months, which comes to $1,600. So I need to know if I can go ahead and go in there and remove her things. The sooner, the better. Thank you.
Always sooner the better.
Right?
Yeah. So key thing I wrote down here. She said, in quote, doesn't live there anymore.
She bums around town.
She bums around town, doesn't live there anymore. The piece of the story that we're missing here to be able to give a really good answer or to understand it fully is, why doesn't she live there anymore? Did she abandon the property? Was she evicted? Did she go through the eviction process? So why doesn't she live there anymore? What's the reasoning behind that? That's going to determine what your next step is, obviously. So
Yeah, I think we both kind of agree. It doesn't sound like this went through a normal eviction process.
Yeah, because I think she would have mentioned that.
Yeah. Well, also, if you went through a normal eviction process and this has been 3 months,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's hard to imagine that unless you went through the eviction process a week ago, that you wouldn't already have like clear, this stuff can be moved out by this date and all that kind of established. What it sounds like is somebody who stopped paying rent, moved out of the house. And I mean, we're guessing, right? We're making some assumptions.
Yep.
Moved out, but left stuff. And now this landlord doesn't know what to do.
Let's say that that's the case.
Yeah.
Let's say that's the case. She moved out, so it's an abandonment because she left with owing rent still, 4 months worth of rent, or stopped paying the rent. But she's still using the place because she's got the keys to the place, right? So in this, I'm imagining most states, most municipalities, they're looking at this and treating this as an occupant situation. She's there. She's occupying the space, no different than a squatter. But she was a tenant there too. So I think you got to go through the eviction. You have to go through the eviction process to get that.
Which seems weird because it's like this person's not sleeping here. They're not living here, but their stuff's here because they were a renter. You're saying that they are still an occupant, even if they're not a resident necessarily. They're occupant of that rental because their stuff is there. You need to go through a proper eviction and get them.
And I think she is living there though. Even though she said she doesn't live there
anymore. She bums
anymore.
around town.
Yeah. Clearly that's a stopping. Yeah. I would say it's not worth risking a lockout in that situation because you don't know if she's going to, claim that that's still her residence. She's still living there.
Yeah. And then you get the improper lockout and all that.
Yeah.
I think this one, sometimes it comes up in the Facebook group where people ask questions and they'll say, this person's late on rent. It's been 15 days. Or when should I actually serve them a notice? And I do these weekly Ask a Property Manager videos. If you guys follow our Facebook page, I think it's rentprep.com/tenant screening, or you just look up Rent Prep on Facebook. We do these every Wednesday at 11 o'clock a.m. Me and Andrew Schultz. Andrew, who's been on our podcast, manages over 125 units, is really insightful. He's definitely by the book kind of guy. And he always says, if rent is due on the 1st, is late on the 5th, they are served a notice on the 6th and they will get their, pay or quit notice.
Yep.
And he is like clockwork about it.
Yep.
There is no...
And consistent.
Yeah, he's consistent and there is no deviating from that.
There's no story good enough that will convince him that the 10th is okay.
He will serve you.
Yes.
And it
As
sounds
you
kind of
should.
harsh, right? Because it's like, well, things happen. There's issues, medical or Christmas. You get all these stories that come up. But you wonder with this landlord, when she's talking about 3 months of unpaid rent, if she had a system like Andrew has, right? Where it's just like the rent is due on this day.
Yep.
It's late on this day. This is when you get your pay or quit notice.
I can almost guarantee, no offense to her, but I can almost guarantee a very brief conversation and you could probably find exactly where things had gone wrong. And I guarantee it's probably along the lines of what you're saying. She couldn't pay. She was going to leave. She said, fine. She let her leave, you know what I mean, without starting the eviction process. So all that past due rent, anything that was going on wasn't tied up. Nothing was agreed upon. She probably just assumed, well, I'm going to just lose. So
There's
she's
no
out.
paper trail.
Yeah. So, you know, this landlord has to take a professional step at this point. You have to manage the property like you should as a business and make a business decision to decide what the right thing to do here is.
Yeah. It might feel kind of cold sometimes, but I guess that comes with running the business.
Yeah, and I've heard plenty of arguments, which I have to agree with, that you're not doing tenants any favor when you're allowing them to pay late. It's conditioning them, it's enabling them, whatever word you want to use to put in place there to say, you're basically training them that it's okay to pay your rent late, but you're sure that they're not paying other things late that they're getting smacked with huge fees on, or the threat of getting it shut off. I mean, how late are they going to pay their cell phone bill if the cell phone gets shut off? I promise you that cell phone bill is getting paid far before the rent.
Yep.
So, you know, there's some truth to that. I think some landlords that I do hear stories about that I got to applaud them and say that's an awesome story is, you know, somebody like Jerry Warner, I think actually from the Facebook group one time. I apologize.
He's a client too, Steve.
Yeah.
It's just not a Facebook group.
He's a friend. He's a friend of the show. So I apologize if I'm wrong in this, Jerry. I may be thinking of somebody else, but I swear I remember him telling a story that he had a long-term tenant. We're talking 4 or 5 year tenant, whatever it was, who had an illness, and he allowed her a few months, I think, to get better, get back on her feet. That's a different story. You got a relationship longer term. You're trying to preserve, I mean, from the business point of view, you're trying to preserve a long-term tenant, and you're trying to be a decent human. I feel like that's the extreme, but I get it. On the other side of it, you know, if you're going month to month or short-term tenancies and somebody in the third month of their lease agreement starts paying late, you got to put your foot down immediately.
Mm-hmm. Well, speaking of weird kind of scenarios with your tenants, I don't know if I told you this yet. Maybe we'll finish the episode on this.
Okay.
I may be in a very rare air now of landlords.
Oh.
So I broke that cardinal rule of renting to your friends.
Yeah.
And this was like 5 years ago. They've been there a while.
Okay.
And they've been great tenants, but I have to admit it makes raising the rent a little awkward. So I've just kind of not done that. So I haven't been optimizing the rent that I should be getting on that apartment. But I was okay with that because I lived downstairs. I wanted really good tenants upstairs while I was living there. And it worked out great. They are now engaged.
Yep.
And they asked me to officiate their wedding.
Oh.
I'm going to be the landlord officiating the tenant's wedding.
Tell them in exchange for an official fee for officiating the wedding, they're going to see a 3% increase in their rent this year.
And that's going to be, you know, each month.
Yeah. Well, all right. So let's talk about this just for a second, because I think I may have some pretty good ideas as you were talking
Did I share
about
this
it.
with you already? I couldn't
No,
remember.
you didn't. No, you didn't tell me that. Which does make it additionally awkward. I could see, obviously, in that scenario.
Oh yeah, there's nothing. They could do whatever they want now between the wedding.
Yeah.
I'd be like, I can't kick them out. I'm going to be
Yeah.
officiating their wedding.
So they are good tenants, and you have to make that decision of, you know, do you want to? It's tough to go back on it now. Obviously, in hindsight, I'm sure you wish that you would have built it into your lease. It would have been automatic. It would have just, you know, continued in perpetuity.
If it was built into the lease, I wouldn't have felt like the stingy friend trying to just, you know, squeeze every dime out of my friendship with these people. And I could have just pointed to the lease and be like, hey, this is what it is.
Yeah, I think you got to take it's going to be awkward, but I think the best approach is just the full blown integrity. Like, hey, listen, you know, we're at the point where you've been here for 5 years, you said?
Yeah, I'd say it's probably 4 to 5 years.
5 years. There hasn't been an increase in rent. My bills obviously are going up. Taxes have increased. I know taxes have definitely increased in the city there. So, you know, I've held off probably too long, and I should have had something built into the lease that, you know, had a rent increase, but I'd like to implement that now. I'll give you guys, you know, until the new lease start date or whatever, give them some time so you're not throwing it on them. Because now you do have to sort of be accommodating because, you know,
I'll be honest, I'm not going to do it.
you're just going to let it roll.
Yeah, you know, they're getting married. I think the next step here is they're going to be house hunting and figuring things out.
Yeah.
And you know what? I don't see them being there long term. And I've weighed this. I've gone back and forth. From a business decision, it doesn't make sense. I would rather learn from this experience, have it baked into the lease not rent to friends in the future, so you don't have to feel bad about this stuff.
Well,
you know what? Also, though, is that house, that rental? It's a 2-unit, is like cash flows like crazy because it was just appreciated so much. So they pay the mortgage. The other units just all profit.
Yeah.
You seem so disappointed in my answer. I'm being honest.
I appreciate it, and I appreciate the integrity behind it too. But I don't think you can make the argument that it's a good business decision.
Mm-mm.
Now, I will say that I agree it's awkward. You painted yourself into a corner, but it's not like I know some of the background of these people. I think I'm aware. It's not like they can't afford it. You're not doing them an additional
One
favor.
of them's a drug dealer. He makes really good money.
Yeah, exactly. No, he's like a professional that does make really good money. And so I don't think it's a situation where you're like going to put him out on the street because you're raising the rent $11 a month or something like that.
But then, this is the catch-22. It was like, well, what's that $11 a month going to be at the end of the year? What is that? 111 plus 22, $132? Is that right? 133?
Sure. What's that? What does that mean in 5 more years, though?
Yeah, but that's why I don't think they're going to be there in 5 years. I don't know that for sure.
Right, but you're also, I'd say you got to plan for the worst in that situation.
I know.
He moved out of town.
There's certain things though where it's just like at a certain point, I understand, and there's going to be a lot of people who would listen to this and disagree with me because it's a business. You need to run it like a business, and clearly, what I've just said, I'm not doing. Right, that flies in the face of that. You run into your friends. You don't want to raise the rent because they're your friends. All that stuff. And going forward, the next tenants that go in there, absolutely, I plan on doing that.
Right.
But I've thought about this, and I spent some time with it, and I just said, you know what? If I was going to raise it even $30 a month, you're talking about $360 a year.
Right.
Not going to make or break things for me.
Right.
I'd rather just not deal with it on this tenant, learn from it going forward, and change it going forward.
I could see that argument. I mean,
if they live there 50 years, I'm making a really bad decision.
Yeah. I mean, maybe at some point, set a date, throw it in the calendar. If they're still there in 2 years from today, maybe this is a longer term thing, and you got to reevaluate the lease.
Maybe the day after they get married.
Yeah.
Like maybe put it in their card,
a new lease.
Be like, hey, I was going to give you guys $200 for this wedding, but I should have raised rent like 4 years ago. So you owe me $16.38.
No, what you do is you calculate the rent that they saved by you not charging them additional rent and tell them that's the wedding gift.
Yeah. And be like, typical efficient is going to cost you $100. So really, I mean, I'm doing you a solid.
Right. And I'm pretty sure you can't get drunk at the wedding. Isn't that a rule? If you're officiating the wedding, you can't get drunk at the wedding.
Oh, I didn't know that.
They're asking a lot of you, man.
I was unaware of these rules.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, what are you going to do?
Well, lesson learned though, but I mean, obviously the takeaway there is have that built in the lease and on the next one.
Yeah, it happens,
Yeah, for sure.
I'm human, Steve.
Listen, man, like I said, I appreciate the transparency and that you're always willing to share the things that you're doing, which are always exact opposite of what we tell landlords. So it's perfect. Yeah. It's like a perfect, what's that story? Goofus.
I'll be honest, I started running background checks pretty recently.
Yeah. You told me that when I hired you. You're like, full disclosure, I have a rental property and I never run a background check.
Well, you know what? I've started. And it was one of those things after you do it, you're like, yeah, of course I'm going to do it. It's like $30 or whatever package you end up choosing. And
it's easy, gives
nothing
you
on
peace
it.
of mind.
Yeah, peace of mind. $30. Like I just didn't rent to somebody who got evicted 6 months ago.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I think that about does it. I've stripped myself of my credibility on this podcast one more time. And until next week, we will, pick up and we got some interviews coming up. We got some more in the news segments and looking to get back into the swing of things after the 4th of July weekend and all that is done. So cool.
Yep.
All right. Take care, everybody.
See ya.